Hello, everyone. I'm Celeste Headlee. I'm the host of the Conference for Women podcast, Women Amplified, and the moderator for today's live Q&A with Kathy Larson, executive recruiter for Bristol Myers Squibb. We are so excited that you're joining us today for the Pennsylvania Conference for Women virtual career fair. We have top employers here looking to fill thousands of job openings and get as many women as possible back to work. So I'm joined today by a talent acquisitions leader with more than 15 years of experience in recruiting, Kathy Larson. Over the next 30 minutes, Kathy will answer your questions live about the job search process, and she'll also give you the inside scoop on the hiring process from a recruiter's perspective. You can ask those questions real time using the chat feature. So we might as well get right to it. Thank you so much for being here today. Kathy, can you tell us a little bit about not just yourself, but also your role?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Celeste, for having me. As Celeste mentioned, I have about 15 years of experience as a recruiter. Currently, I am at Bristol Myers Squibb supporting executive recruitment within the Global Drug Development Organization, supporting the executive hiring of talent here at BMS. In my role, obviously I have extensive experience in end-to-end recruitment, and this can start all the way from requirement analysis to meeting with the hiring manager, discussing the recruitment strategy on how we will go out and find the talent, and then making sure that position gets posted on various channels, as well as reaching out directly and sourcing candidates. And this can be the means of LinkedIn or working through referrals and speaking to the networks that we have available to us. And then, of course, looking at resumes, looking at what has come in, setting up initial phone screens, scheduling interviews, and then all the way from offer creation, negotiation, and extension. So as you can see, there is a long list of activities that happen when we acquire talent. And I'm really looking forward to answer your questions in real time about what you're looking for as a job seeker when you're out there in the field. So thank you so much. And Celeste, I'll return it back over to you. Thank you.
So we always have a lot of questions during these sessions. And the first one is, I'm sure you end up looking at a lot of different resumes. How can I, as a job applicant, make sure that my resume stands out?
Great question. So my preference is really to have a clean resume. As far as a format, I like a classic resume format and font. And although this is simple information, I just want to put out that it is okay to have a resume that is longer than one page. I know in some circumstances, people are always concerned about getting everything on one page. And I think people need to understand, as you develop your career and you spend time in the workforce, it is very common to have a 2 to 3 page resume. Even if you are in a scientific or technical role, sometimes resumes will even exceed that amount. So I just wanted to highlight that. I think it's important to tie your experience, relevant experience, to the job in which you are applying to. If there's specific experience that a position is requiring and you have it and you do not have it reflecting in your resume, certainly take the time and update that resume. Another topic I like to share is put results in there. I know a lot of people put down their responsibility, but what are some initiatives that you were part of that ended up in positive results? How did it impact the business? Get it in there and tie it to metrics. I think it's a way to make your resume stand out. And I think the last thing I would reflect on is certainly career growth, right? If you've been at a position for a period of time, you've certainly probably taken on increased responsibilities, maybe mentored folks, maybe stepped up and took on different level of tasks. And I'd certainly highlight that, tie that into your resume. I think those are 4 little topics I would certainly put down as would help your resume stand out when putting a resume together for a position that you are interested in applying for.
So here's another question for you. What do you think are the most valued transferable skills that you look for when you're interviewing a candidate? Maybe that's not from the healthcare industry, right? Somebody who has not been in that industry before. What skills work in multiple industries?
Right. That's a great question. I mean, what transferable skills? I mean, you can teach experience. Sometimes there are skills that you cannot teach. And so I really think interpersonal skills are excellent. If you are coming into the healthcare industry, dealing with people, working across different groups, I think having those interpersonal skills are key. Also, excellent communication skills, being able to communicate and get your point across. And again, I think if you are, maybe don't have extensive experience, but you have some of these transferable skills, you can easily move into the workforce and gain that experience. Again, you can't necessarily teach certain transferable skills. I think people have them naturally, but you can certainly gain experience.
Another one, how can you leverage a multitude of experience? Maybe somebody has a pretty broad diversity of experience. So how do you leverage that, even if you don't have specific credentials or certifications in a particular field?
Well, I would say that can be sometimes tricky because there are certain positions that do require specific skills. It is a requirement, maybe because it's dealing with specific with a healthcare requirement that is needed. However, again, I think if you have various different levels of experiences and skills that are transferable, and it's something that you can certainly speak to about during the interview process, I think that is key. I mean, again, not everybody who steps into a brand new role and has all the experiences and requirements. There is opportunities for you to learn and apply new experiences and requirements as you are in the journey and in a new position. So I think really just being able to reflect on what you know, what you've learned, and how you can transfer it to the position in which you're applying to that may not be an exact fit for your role might be a way to kind of get your foot in the door.
Are there signs or ways to recognize when an employer is willing to let you get a certification while you're on the job or while you're onboarding?
Absolutely. I mean, that is a question you should ask during the interview process. Tell me about opportunities that you provide to your employees. Do you support ongoing education? Do you support certification? I think there are some employers that will hire certain candidates that maybe don't have a certification, but put a roadmap into place when they will go and get that certification. So absolutely, I think that is a very good question to ask during the interview process. Ask your recruiter. It also will speak a lot about a company's culture that they're developing their talent. I think that's a great question to ask.
So one person wants to know how to respond to certain common questions you get during the interview process. So let's take them one at a time. The first one is, what are your salary expectations? If I get that question during my interview, what's the best way to answer that?
So that can be a tricky one, right? So some people are not comfortable speaking about compensation. If you're not comfortable speaking about compensation, I think a general response I would like to be compensated based on what the position pays for, based on the roles and responsibilities that I would be assuming. I would be expected to be compensated market rate in comparison to other people holding a similar role. So, and if you are comfortable, answering what your salary expectations are, then you can certainly share that information. But in some certain locations, that is a question. Sometimes that is not asked in general.
Okay, here's the second one they want to know how to respond to. Why did you leave your last position, or why are you leaving your current position? What's the right way to answer that?
Well, you never want to talk negative about an organization where you're at, even if you are not happy. But maybe there's certain things you're just not getting the opportunity to do at your current position. So I think having a valid and reasonable response to that question that makes sense to why you're looking. Is it career advancement? Is you want to get into a different role where you get the opportunity to work on something differently? I think really do a little soul searching and being able to reflect on that experience would be key when answering that question.
Here's another one. Are there any roles or industries you recommend for early career professionals that need income to establish themselves before diving into their career path? Like, what are some good starter jobs for a young person?
Well, that question is a good question. A lot of people come out of college and education and are looking for how do I get my foot in the door? I think leveraging internships if you can through your current university if you're not quite graduated is a great way to gain some experience. looking for entry-level type of roles with an organization, again, that does provide career development for employees is key. I know, that there are a lot of companies where you can start in one type of position, but over a period of time, especially, in the HR function, there's a lot of opportunities where you can grow. So I think it's really finding a company that it may not be the ideal position that you may want coming into, long term, but I think sometimes people need to understand they need to start someplace and get their foot in the door with a good company. But there certainly are early career positions out there. And I think just understanding what those positions are and, going to the job fairs, meeting as much people as possible, getting out there, getting your face in front of people, and networking is the best way to kind of start your career when you're kind of, early in your career or, ready to move into the workforce full time.
Are there no-nos? And I say that because there are some people whose situation doesn't allow them to take an internship, maybe that's very low paid or unpaid. It doesn't allow them to take some of these entry-level jobs, which are quite low in salary, or maybe the entry-level jobs that are near them are not the kind of companies that have career development, right? There's maybe smaller businesses. So are any of those red flags for a recruiter? Should people be worried about some of the first jobs they get out of college?
I would say no. I think if I think some people have a direct path based on what they went to school for and what they're looking to do, but I think there's a lot of people that come out of school and not sure exactly where their career is going to take them. So I don't really think there is any red flags if someone takes a position out of college or out of school, more early career, that you may reflect later on when they're looking for a different position. So I don't see any red flags. I think there is a willingness and attitude to take on a position that will help further your career as you gain professional experience. I think that says a lot about an individual that is trying to, move things in the right direction.
This is a really common question, especially among females, which is how do you recommend finding a mentor? I mean, we're often told, choose the right mentor, be careful in who you pick as your mentor, but how do you find that?
I think through your network. I think, I don't think maybe you have someone that you've known for a period of time that you respect, and, maybe speaking to someone and asking them if they have any recommendations of someone that you could be a mentor, even if you start in a role or work within a company and there's a, specific hiring manager, maybe someone you work with closely in another department that is more seasoned or has more experience or, has a lot of valuable, ideas and things that you've seen them do. And, maybe that's a person you would reach out to and ask, I'm looking for a mentor, would you be willing to be a mentor? I think people are very flattered when they get asked. I think you just need to ask. And if maybe they aren't necessarily available to be a mentor, maybe there's someone else is mentoring, they can certainly provide someone else potentially. So I think just asking and working through your network and finding the right mentor. But I do agree it is a complicated process when you're first starting, but it is important as you go through your journey as in your career.
I will note for everyone who's attending here that research shows all of us tend to really overestimate the chances that people will say no when we ask for help. And we all tend to really underestimate how much other people want to help and how much pleasure other people get out of helping. So if you're nervous about asking someone to be your mentor, dive in because you're probably going to hear a yes. We talked a little bit about younger people entering, just beginning to start their career. But this question is, what recommendations do you have for someone who is older and is now looking to find a position?
I think, I think going out and being a applicant and looking for a new position, regardless of age, I think it's treated the same. You need to, apply to positions that you think you are a fit for, network, and certainly, do what you can in order to, make yourself available, attending conferences, attending networking events. I think it's all relevant regardless of what stage you are in your career. It's all excellent, opportunities for you to take a hold of.
Just to drill down on this just a little bit, should you maybe not, try to conceal your age, either by not including dates on certain things or, something else? Or is there a good way to communicate that you are looking for a long-term position to grow with a company, even if you are older?
I mean, I think the resume, you can decide how far you want to go back. I think that's something that you can decide personally. I don't think you need to put what year you graduated college or anything to that extent on the resume. Again, it's a decision that you would make. But I think if you have a long history of employment and you've been at some companies for a long period of time, when you're interviewing with an employer, that should be something that's important to you. That's something that you should ask during the interview process, understanding what's the tenure at a company, understanding that you're looking for a place where you can, be for a period of time, and what opportunities for advancement in your career would be available. So I think these are all things that you can certainly ask during the interview process.
We have had a lot of questions, not just today, but in other arenas with the Conferences for Women, of people who are transitioning to a different industry, a different career path, maybe someone who has decided to head towards management, maybe someone who's decided management is not their thing. These career transitions can be nerve-wracking, right? They can be very difficult for people to do, especially if you have a long history in a particular position or an industry behind you. So any advice on pivoting, selling those transferable skills you were talking about earlier, and being taken seriously, even if you're coming with 20 years of experience in a different industry altogether?
That's a tough one, and I think that's going to be sometimes up to, is a hiring manager willing to look outside the box? And I think it's important that we look at transferable skills and not always experience, because you can have experience in a different field or in a different arena that can certainly transfer. But again, having specific skills and the ability to move into a different field, is those opportunities are tough. I have seen them happen, but it's not something you see often, because usually the candidates that may have more relevant experience may get picked up first or looked at to first. But I think, understanding your reasons to why you like to make the change, and is there any career development or anything that you can do to help you prepare you to make that change. And I think that's important. And again, I think going to conferences or career fairs around the type of positions that you're trying to target would be beneficial as well. But certainly that one is sometimes a little bit more difficult for a candidate to make that pivot. But I think right now, we have a very dynamic workforce, and we have a lot of great employers. And I think the workforce right now has the advantage of picking and choosing types of companies that they are looking for. So I think, the opportunities are certainly there if you can present yourself, and obviously have a manager that's willing to accept a candidate that maybe doesn't check all the boxes, but certainly can do the job. So that would be, my advice on that one, but it sometimes can be a little difficult. I agree.
Is it okay to say that you want a remote or at least a hybrid position when you're interviewing, or do leaders in recruiting take that as a black mark?
I wish I could say, no, you can absolutely say that. In fact, that is a question most candidates ask almost immediately these days, because a lot of candidates are seeking that hybrid working model or 100% remote. So I think as a candidate, you need to be upfront, right? Be upfront with what type of working arrangement you are looking for. And I think being transparent is the best way, and we would certainly not look negative. But there are some companies that it is a policy that you need to be in the office. So I would hate for someone to make that journey to the final interview stage, get an offer, and then come to find out that they do need to be in the office. It is a requirement. So do yourself a favor, be completely transparent, and understand what that work, hybrid policy is if there is one. But certainly that's something that should be addressed on the front end.
So I think this next one is a really, really good question. And it is, what questions can an applicant ask, or how can one find out what a company's real culture is during the interview process? I mean, all of us are going to go online and we're going to see those press releases that the companies have written about how great it is to work there. How do we get past that to see what the culture is really like and if we're a fit?
Yeah, I mean, I think the questions you ask during the interview are really going to have to determine what's important to you in a culture. So the questions would be different for every candidate. Tell me about your work-life balance. Tell me about career development. I think these are all important questions that can help you determine, is this culture a fit for me? Tell me about your management style. How do you manage your team? These are, again, questions that would help you determine, is this type of management style right for me? So, I think it really depends on the candidate and what type of culture they are looking for when they decide what questions to ask. But certainly the best way to address the culture question is during the interview. And if you get to go on site and meet with other team members, certainly ask similar questions as well.
Any suggestions on how you pass that initial AI review when you're applying online, right? Like, what kind of applications stick out for you? Very often, some companies will have the automated process first. Any ideas how somebody can get through that?
Well, we don't have an AI automated process at BMS, I will tell you that. But I know some other companies, if you don't meet certain requirements, you may not, necessarily be marked as a fully qualified candidate. I think when you apply to a position, you need to apply to a position that makes sense, right? Unfortunately, if there is any AI technology that is implemented in a applicant tracking system during the application process, unfortunately, there's really not much a recruiter can do around it. We certainly, in some scenarios, are looking at resumes. So that's a tricky question because there may be a little bit nothing that can be done if there is some sort of AI, artificial intelligence during an application process that would deem a resume or applicant not suitable for the position.
Here's another question about salary. If the question is asked in an interview, isn't it better to note the minimum salary you would accept if there is such a thing?
Absolutely. I think, again, it's up to the candidate. In my position, we ask, what are your salary expectations? Are you willing to share your salary expectations? So if you're comfortable sharing with what the minimum that you would accept, then that's certainly up to you to make that request. Again, I think it comes down to the individual. Some people are just not comfortable talking about compensation, but I think the more information that you are willing to share to help the team craft a competitive offer, and offer that hopefully that the candidate will accept, the better. But again, we respect both avenues as part of the process when we put an offer together.
So let me ask, I generally think it's the company's responsibility to offer something before I tell them my salary requirements. So when I get asked that question, I'll say, what's the salary range for this position? How do you feel about that, especially in light of, the research that shows that salary transparency is generally a really good way to make things more equitable, not only between women, but also with people of color? Can I just simply ask, what's the salary range for this position?
Absolutely. You can certainly ask, what's the salary range for this position? I usually do share with candidates, how we look at, salaries. We look at market data, we look at internal equity. We try to come up with the most comprehensive and competitive salary. But absolutely, as a candidate, you can certainly ask for the salary range. That's something that you can certainly ask about, as well as any other compensation structure around bonus or potential stock that might be available for the applicants that are applying.
So we just have like about a minute left, and I'm going to see if I can get 2 quick questions in. The first one is, what's your view of using that summary that some people use on their resumes?
Don't overthink it. That's always going to be my feedback is, make it, I think clear, concise. I see a lot of resumes that don't even include it, especially when they're trying to shorten a resume. You're not going to not get hired for a position because you don't have a professional summary at the top of your resume. So don't overthink it. But certainly, if you like to have a professional summary, I would certainly keep it short and sweet. But again, sometimes I see them, sometimes I don't. And I just like to tell candidates, don't always get hung up on what you're putting on your summary.
Okay, and let me just take 30 seconds for this last question, which is, how can I ask about accommodations without disclosing my disability?
Absolutely. So you do not have to ask, disclose your disability during the interview process. Keep it, straightforward. Reach out to the HR representative or the hiring manager. Let them know in order for you to be successful during the interview process, you need to have this accommodation, and let that person know what that is. By all means, you do not need to disclose any kind of disability during the interview process.
Any last thoughts? Or maybe there's a common mistake you see applicants making?
Sure. I mean, this is one that, I like to point out, especially as there's a lot of people looking to get back into the workforce, is, just because you apply to one position at a company doesn't mean that you're being considered for other positions. So if you do see, 2, 3, 5 positions that you feel that you are a potential fit for or you're interested in, please apply to all of them, because there's, especially in a larger organization, there's different recruiters supporting different positions. And again, just because you see yourself, apply for one role and you don't hear back, but you see 2 other positions, please apply to them, because you want to have visibility. And if just because you don't hear back in one position doesn't mean, the other ones are still not being considered. So please apply to more than one position if you feel that you are a fit.
That is great advice. I want to say thank you to Kathy so much for the advice, the suggestions, and the insight. I know that's going to help people as they either transition or get back into the workforce, or however they are interacting with the hiring process. On behalf of the Pennsylvania Conference for Women, we really hope everyone enjoyed today's virtual career fair and this Ask the Recruiter session. If you have not done so already, I really urge you to upload your resume to maximize your interactions with participating employers like Bristol Myers Squibb. We wish you all the luck in your job search and hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks.